In this video, I'm going to explain to you step by step how to teach a reading lesson successfully, and stick around to the end because this video also applies to one of your assignments on the CELTA course. That's the language systems related task, the LSRT assignment. I will give you the rationales of why you're doing each stage. I'm going to suggest some tasks, and I'm going to give you some quotations from relevant authors for rationales, again, why you're doing those tasks, which will help you a lot with your assignments. So let's jump into it. So first things first, the stages of a reading lesson. What are they? There are 5 of them. There's a lead-in, there's pre-teach of vocabulary, there's a gist task, there's a detailed task, and then there's a follow-up productive task. And those are the stages of a reading lesson. Let's talk about each one and why you are doing it. So the first one, the lead-in. Why do you do a lead-in and what does it look like? Well, the first thing, why are you doing a lead-in? You're doing that to engage students with the context, to generate interest and to activate their schemata. That is their knowledge or background knowledge of the world that will help them interact with the text. Now, sometimes people fall into the trap of thinking that my purpose here is to teach students about the subject matter of my reading text. Recently, I was working with a person and we were looking at a text all about impact of AI on education. And in the beginning, it looked like, oh, we have to teach students to think critically about AI. And while that is good and no problems with it, that's not our purpose when it comes to teaching reading. Our purpose when it comes to teaching reading is to develop students' sub-skills of reading for gist and detail. So that lead-in is really just to engage the students with that topic so that we come back to developing these sub-skills of gist and detail. Okay, the next stage, pre-teaching vocabulary. Again, sometimes trainees or new teachers will think, okay, I'm gonna teach the difficult words. And that's a good place to kind of start off, but we can give a little bit more rationale and a little bit more, I guess, reason why we are pre-teaching vocab. And the way that you do that is by focusing on what are called blocking items. So a blocking item is a piece of vocabulary that if the students don't understand what it means, then they won't be able to do one of the tasks, the gist or the detailed task. So that's kind of your test for whether you should teach something or not. Does it appear in one of the questions in the gist or detailed task? And is it kind of like a key piece of vocabulary that you could have a reasonable expectation that the students might not understand what that means? And if they don't understand what it means, then they won't be able to do the task. If the answers to those questions are yes, then you should add that to your pre-teaching of vocabulary. Now, one more bonus tip when it comes to pre-teaching vocabulary is that you should teach no more than, let's say, 7, maximum 8 items in a 1-hour lesson. So if you're teaching less than 1 hour, let's say you're teaching 45 minutes, then you should aim for 5 or 6. Bonus tip is that a really good way of pre-teaching vocab with student-centered focus is to use a matching task. Have your words and have images, for example, and then ask students to match those up. Don't worry so much about covering all aspects of meaning, form, and pronunciation because after all, this is a reading lesson, not a vocabulary lesson. Yeah, sure, you might ask 1 or 2 CCQs, concept checking questions. You might drill a little bit of pronunciation, but really it doesn't have the same focus as it would if it were a language systems lesson. And in the language systems, as I say, it would be a vocabulary or Lexis lesson. So that's not the case here. You're just pre-teaching some vocab so that the students can do the reading tasks successfully. Before I get on to the next tip, I just wanted to take one quick minute of your time to tell you about my website where you can book an appointment with me, a free 45-minute consultation just to talk about whatever your language teaching goals are. I'm here to spend that time with you and discuss how you can better achieve them. The third stage, the gist task. Why are you doing a gist task? Well, now that you've established your context through your lead-in and you've pre-taught some vocabulary, well, students are ready to do some actual reading. The GIST task is focused on getting the learners to read quickly and get an overall idea of the text. Now I'm going to read, I've got a quote here from Jeremy Harmer. Jeremy Harmer says, effective reading involves not only understanding individual words, but also grasping the main ideas and overall meaning of the text. Reading for GIST allows readers to quickly identify key information and comprehend the central message of the text. So there's a good rationale that could go into your assignment for why learners need to read for GIST. Here's a good example of a GIST task. A good GIST task could be take the title of the article you're going to get the students to read and then invent another title which is pretty similar. Let's go back to my example of the text about AI. Say that the title is AI will replace teachers. Then you might invent a title that says teachers want to replace classes with AI. So you see that that's kind of similar, but it's different. So now the students read the text and then they just decide which is the correct title. Because after all, the title really is the gist of the text, right? So they're just looking and trying to decide which one best applies to the text, and that's a good GIST task. Okay, now we've done our GIST task, let's move on to reading for detail, or sometimes referred to as scanning. And yet again, I've got a quote here for you, this time from Jim Scrivener. And Scrivener says, scanning, which is reading for detail as well, scanning involves moving your eyes quickly down the page, looking for specific words or phrases. It is useful for quickly locating specific information in a text, such as names, dates, or statistics. You know, a strong scanning task doesn't require students only to lift that information out of the text, but it requires them to understand something about the text. So very useful task type to achieve scanning or reading for detail is a true-false task. So just the way I tend to design that is I go through the text paragraph by paragraph, I pull out a sentence, and then I just turn that into a question. Now, caveat there, let's say your text is 20 paragraphs long. You don't want to have 20 true-false questions. You might have kind of maximum 10. 10 is a good number for a 1 hour lesson. Again, if your lesson is shorter, aim for between 5 and 8. And again, make sure that that's graded dependent on the level that you're teaching. Okay, so now that your two reading tasks, your GIST and detail tasks are complete, it's time to wrap up the lesson with a follow-up productive task. Now, the follow-up productive task can take three forms. The first, and I would say rarest on a CELTA course, is developing a third reading sub-skill, and that is inferring meaning from context. So what you might do is you might pull out some more vocabulary and direct the students towards where it appears in the text, and then provide them with some meaning-based tasks. This is really starting to focus on the language systems in the lesson. So that's why I say it's kind of the rarest, because we usually want to keep these receptive skills reading lessons totally skills focused. So that leads me to the two other possibilities. Again, I'm going from rarest to most common. So the rarer skills, productive skills task would be a follow-up writing task. This could take the form of you read an article, again, about AI, for example, and you might get the students to write an email or write a blog post or something like that in response to the article which they've read. However, the third one, and probably the most surest bet for you, the one that is going to create the most engagement, most student-centered, give you the most opportunities to provide feedback to your learners, is to do a follow-up speaking task. And all you need to do is just go back, look at your reading text, and take out 1 or 2 points, turn those into questions, ask the students to share their opinions on those points, or do they agree or disagree. Generally, if you have the numbers, I like to put students into groups for this, groups of 3, 4 if it's a big group, but of course pairs will work just fine. Okay, that's it for this video. Remember, it does apply not just to your reading lessons, but also to your skills related task assignment on CELTA. So let me know in the comments down below, how have your reading lessons been going? How have you been able to apply this to your assignments as well? And what other challenges or maybe brainwaves have you had when it comes to teaching reading? Please do like, share, and subscribe. Share this video on your social media or by email or text message or whatever with anybody who you think would get some value out of this content which I've created. Remember, my objective here is really just to share my knowledge and my experience with all of you to help you all become the best language teachers that you can so that we can deliver the best lessons for our students. Okay, thank you so much for watching. All that's left for me to say is bye for now, and I'll see you in the next one.